Valentine's Day 5 years ago in Parkland, Florida, a 19-year-old gunman armed with an AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle just walked into Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, opening fire and killing 14 students and 3 staff members in under 4 minutes. The school building where the massacre took place has been closed since the shooting, preserved as a crime scene left with remnants of the violence and the bloodshed. This week, as a part of a pending civil lawsuit against former Broward Sheriff Deputy Scott Peterson for his alleged inaction, as well as the Broward Sheriff's Office and others, parents had the opportunity to privately visit the building one last time before its planned demolition. Many left with the heartbreaking last memories of their child from that life-altering day. One of those parents is here with me now. I have the honor of having Max Schachter, founder and CEO of Safe Schools for Alex, here. Max is the parent of Alex Schachter, who was just 14 years old when he was killed in the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School shooting. Max, I thanked you during the break for being here because I know these are never easy conversations to have, but your willingness to engage the public on what you've experienced, I think, is going to move the needle, hopefully, more quickly than we've seen happen. We were talking about how you had the opportunity to go and visit Marjory Stoneman Douglas, but more specifically the building where your son, who was a freshman at the time, was murdered, and you had the chance to go to his classroom. Can you share with our viewers and with me how that was for you to have this chance? Because I had read, Max, that for the longest time you didn't want to get into the minutia. You didn't want to know the details, and so you were surprised when you kind of said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go see where my son Alex died.
I'm on the MSD commission, so I knew more than most, but what happened in Alex's classroom, I didn't want to know because it was so painful. But after the Scott Peterson trial, we got an opportunity to go into that building, which we had not had before. And I wanted to know, I wanted to see what happened, and I wanted to sit in Alex's chair. I wanted to see where he took his last breath. And when I got in there, I had no idea that it was going to be a war zone. It was a horror movie. There was blood everywhere. And I walked in there, and Alex's chair was covered with blood. There was blood all over the floor. There was actually an English paper that he was working on that was on the ground. And it was extremely painful to see that, knowing that Alex went through this.
How did you have the courage and the fortitude to do this? Like, what made you feel like it was time for you to be able to go and actually experience those last moments that your son would have experienced on that day?
I wanted to I wanted to connect with Alex, and that's where he was. That's where he took his last breath. I wanted to be in that space. I wanted to be there. It was my way of loving him.
You were given, maybe a couple of days later, after you walked the halls of Marjory Stoneman Douglas, a box. It had Alex's backpack, his lunchbox, and some other of his personal belongings. Yeah. It was taped. It had biohazard tape on it. I know that you've posted on social media that you're not sure if you're ever going to be able to open that box. Have you had the chance to open it? Are you going to open it? You
know, I wanted all of that, including Alex's poem that I had found as I was struggling to write his eulogy at 5 o'clock in the morning, the night before his funeral. My son, Alex's older brother, Ryan, said, "Dad, why don't we look in his trash can?" And what we found was a crumpled up poem that was called "Life is Like a Roller Coaster." I didn't even know he had written it, and I wanted the original back. He had handed in to his English teacher. He was killed in English class. And I wanted that original back, and I wanted anything that was Alex's. Alex wore that backpack that day. I wanted that back as well. But when I got this box where it said defect on it, I didn't know what that meant. And then the prosecutors were telling me that a defect is something that has a bullet strike through it. I couldn't believe it. You know, I wanted this back. It was Alex's. It was the last thing that he touched. And then to be told that it had a bullet through it, it just changed everything for me, because now it represented so much pain that Alex was going through at that time when he was standing up to try to run away from the gunman, and he didn't have time, and Alex was shot twice in the chest.
Max, let's talk about this reenactment that's been allowed to occur, and it's going to occur. The details of which were shocking to me. They're actually going to take blanks in an AR-15 style weapon, allow someone to actually track the steps of Nicholas Cruz, the murderer in this case, but also more importantly, track the steps or the inaction of Scott Peterson, who was a deputy at the time, who was at the school, who didn't respond, even knowing that kids were being killed and that other staff members were being killed and injured. How do you feel about this reenactment, one? And two, how do you feel about the criminal verdict, which was not guilty, for Scott Peterson?
This reenactment is so critical because of the precedent that the acquittal, happened in the criminal trial. The acquittal basically says that a school resource officer doesn't have any duty to respond when kids are getting killed. So this reenactment is going to prove that Scott Peterson did know, because in the criminal trial he said he didn't hear the gunshots. Well, we know that the shooting started at 2:21. By 2:23, he was dropped off at the front of that building. Now, there's 13 buildings on this campus. He was dropped off at one building, the 1200 building, which is where the gunman went into the building and started shooting. And when he arrived there at 2:23 was the same time that the murderer killed Aaron Feiss. So this reenactment is critical. It's going to show that there's no possible way that he didn't hear those gunshots. He was feet away from that building, and then he went and retreated. There was 70 gunshots of an AR-15 going off. There's absolutely no possible way that he didn't hear, and he stood back. All officers have to know, that they are going to be held responsible, and there are going to be repercussions if they retreat for 40 minutes when kids are dying and bleeding in that building. We've got to correct the injustice that happened in the criminal trial.
Let's talk about correcting that injustice. You have said you want to take your anguish and you want to convert it. You want to make it into advocacy. Tell our viewers about what you are doing, going to D.C., the reintroduction of Alyssa's Law, safer schools for Alex. Like, what are you doing to be able to change your pain and make it into advocacy?
I'm definitely going to do that up in Washington, D.C., but the more immediate thing is that after going through that building, I shouldn't have to go through that building by myself.
Okay.
The elected leaders that we elect to Congress, the congressmen, the senators, I don't want them just to like my tweet. I want them to come with me through that building so they can see the implications and the ramifications of their policies and procedures when you don't prioritize safety and security above education. Because you can't teach dead kids, and I want all of these legislators from around the country. It just doesn't have to be from Florida. They should all come with me. Join forces with the Parkland families, the 17 families that lost their loved ones. They all should come with me. Walk next to me through that building. See what happened. And I think we would have a much safer world if that happened.